The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. Most believe that pressure reveals character. That intense heat forges strength. This is a comforting lie, designed to pacify the masses and excuse the failures of the incompetent. Pressure doesn't reveal character, it destroys it. It exposes the fault lines, the hidden weaknesses carefully concealed beneath layers of practiced behavior. The man who crumbles under scrutiny was never strong to begin with. The mind that fractures under duress was always brittle. Only the disciplined, those who have meticulously cultivated their inner landscape, can truly withstand the crushing weight of expectation. We are not interested in revealing ourselves under pressure. We are interested in dominating the pressure, bending it to our will, and using it as a weapon against those who seek to control us. This requires a cold, calculated approach, a dispassionate understanding of the human psyche and its inherent vulnerabilities. To be sovereign is to master your own mind, to inoculate yourself against the corrosive effects of fear, doubt, and panic. This is not a matter of positive thinking or motivational platitudes. It is a matter of rigorous self-assessment, identifying your weaknesses and systematically dismantling them. It is a constant, relentless process of refinement, a forging of the self that takes place not in the crucible of external pressure, but in the quiet solitude of conscious effort. The world will try to break you. It will hurl challenges, setbacks, and betrayals your way, seeking to expose your limits and exploit your fears. But if you have prepared yourself, if you have cultivated the inner strength that comes from self-mastery, you will not break. You will bend, adapt, and emerge stronger than before. You will become a force to be reckoned with, a silent predator operating in the shadows, turning the very pressure meant to destroy you into the fuel that drives your ascent. The architecture of the mind is not static. It is a dynamic, ever-shifting landscape sculpted by experience and choice. Pressure, then, acts as a seismic force, capable of reshaping the terrain, widening existing fault lines, or, conversely, compacting and fortifying the bedrock. Understanding this transformative potential is crucial for anyone seeking to not only survive but thrive in high-stakes environments. Consider the novice gambler facing his first significant loss. The sudden plunge into the red can trigger a cascade of emotional responses: panic, desperation, a reckless urge to recoup losses through increasingly irrational bets. This is the mind fracturing under the weight of immediate consequence, its carefully constructed facade of composure crumbling to reveal the raw, undisciplined instincts beneath. The seasoned player, however, views the same loss with a detached objectivity. It is a data point, a variable in a complex equation. He analyzes the contributing factors, adjusts his strategy, and moves forward without succumbing to emotional volatility. This difference lies not in innate talent, but in the cultivation of mental resilience, a deliberate hardening of the psychological defenses against the destabilizing effects of pressure. This resilience is not simply a matter of stoic acceptance. It is an active process of cognitive reframing. The skilled operator learns to redefine pressure, not as a threat, but as a catalyst for growth, an opportunity to test the limits of his abilities and refine his decision-making under fire. They understand that the discomfort and anxiety associated with high-pressure situations are not signs of weakness, but rather signals that the mind is actively adapting and evolving. Moreover, those who crumble under pressure often do so because they have a fragile, idealized self-image to protect. They fear the exposure of their flaws, the judgment of others, the shattering of their carefully constructed persona. The truly resilient individual, on the other hand, has confronted and accepted their own imperfections. They are not afraid to make mistakes because they view errors as learning opportunities, valuable feedback in the ongoing process of self-improvement. They understand that vulnerability is not weakness, but rather a source of strength, a prerequisite for authentic connection and genuine growth. This acceptance of imperfection allows them to operate with greater freedom and agility, unburdened by the fear of failure. Pressure reveals not only the strengths and weaknesses of the individual, but also the underlying values and priorities that guide their actions. When faced with a difficult decision under duress, people often revert to their most deeply held beliefs. Those who are motivated by greed or self-aggrandizement will prioritize their own interests, even at the expense of others. Those who are guided by principles of integrity and compassion will strive to do what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular. Therefore, cultivating a strong moral compass is essential for maintaining clarity and focus under pressure. Without a clear sense of right and wrong, individuals can easily become disoriented and make decisions that they later regret. Furthermore, mastering the art of deception is paramount. Misdirection, feigned vulnerability, and calculated displays of emotion can be powerful tools for manipulating perceptions and controlling the narrative. But these techniques must be deployed with precision and subtlety, avoiding the pitfalls of arrogance or overconfidence. The goal is not simply to deceive, but to create a carefully crafted illusion that reinforces the desired outcome. This requires a deep understanding of human psychology, the ability to anticipate reactions, and the willingness to exploit vulnerabilities. Those who underestimate the power of deception are often the most easily manipulated. They fall prey to carefully crafted narratives, blindly trusting appearances without questioning the underlying motives. The truly sovereign individual, on the other hand, is always vigilant, always questioning, always searching for the hidden agenda. They understand that trust is a precious commodity to be earned, not freely given. They cultivate a healthy skepticism, refusing to accept information at face value and always seeking to verify the truth through independent sources. The cultivation of this mental fortitude demands constant vigilance, a relentless pursuit of self-awareness, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It is not a passive state of being, but an active process of self-creation, a continuous refinement of the inner landscape that prepares the individual to weather any storm, to withstand any pressure, and to emerge not just intact, but stronger and more resolute than before. Ultimately, the mind under pressure becomes a crucible, testing the mettle of one's character, revealing the true nature of their being. It is in these moments of intense challenge that individuals have the opportunity to transcend their limitations, to discover their true potential, and to forge a destiny worthy of their highest aspirations. The ability to harness the power of pressure, to transform it from a destructive force into a catalyst for growth, is the hallmark of true mastery, the defining characteristic of those who rise above the ordinary and achieve extraordinary things. Consider the world of high-stakes finance, where billions of dollars can shift with a single decision. Picture a seasoned trader, a man named Elias Thorne, known for his uncanny ability to predict market fluctuations. Thorne isn't some reckless gambler. He's a strategist, a master of risk assessment, and a student of human behavior. His firm, a titan of Wall Street, thrives on exploiting market inefficiencies, on identifying and capitalizing on opportunities that others miss. Thorne understands that the market is not a rational entity. It's a reflection of collective human emotion, a volatile sea of greed, fear, and uncertainty. He recognizes that these emotions, magnified by the immense pressure of financial stakes, can cloud judgment and lead even the most experienced professionals to make catastrophic errors. Thorne's approach isn't based on intuition or gut feeling. It's rooted in a meticulous analysis of data, a deep understanding of market psychology, and an unwavering commitment to rationality. He cultivates an almost inhuman detachment, a stoic indifference to the noise and chaos that surrounds him. He understands that the pressure to perform, to generate profits, can be overwhelming, especially when billions of dollars are on the line. He's witnessed firsthand how this pressure can break individuals, leading them to panic, to make impulsive decisions, and ultimately to self-destruction. The story that defined Thorne involved a hostile takeover bid, a calculated power play by a rival firm to acquire a struggling tech company. The bid triggered a frenzy of speculation, driving the target company's stock price to unprecedented levels. Thorne's firm held a significant short position in the company, betting that the stock price would eventually plummet. But as the takeover battle intensified, the stock price continued to climb, defying all rational expectations. The pressure on Thorne became immense. His superiors, driven by fear and the potential for massive losses, began to question his strategy. They urged him to cover the short position, to cut their losses and mitigate the damage. The media was relentless, portraying Thorne as a reckless gambler on the verge of financial ruin. His personal life became a target of scrutiny. Every aspect of his past was dissected and analyzed. Despite the mounting pressure, Thorne remained resolute. He believed that the takeover bid was unsustainable, that the stock price was artificially inflated, and that it would eventually collapse under its own weight. He knew that surrendering to the pressure would be a sign of weakness, an admission of defeat. It would also validate the irrational behavior that was driving the market. Thorne doubled down on his position, increasing his firm's short exposure, betting even more heavily that the stock price would crash. His decision was met with disbelief and outrage. He was accused of arrogance, of recklessness, and of jeopardizing the firm's future. But Thorne ignored the criticism, focusing instead on his analysis, on the underlying fundamentals that he believed would ultimately prevail. As the pressure reached its peak, a critical piece of information surfaced, evidence of accounting irregularities at the target company. The information, leaked by a disgruntled employee, revealed that the company's financial performance had been artificially inflated to justify the takeover bid. Thorne immediately seized on this information, using it to undermine the credibility of the takeover attempt. He orchestrated a carefully coordinated media campaign, exposing the accounting irregularities and highlighting the risks associated with the acquisition. The impact was immediate and devastating. The target company's stock price plummeted, erasing billions of dollars in market value. The takeover bid collapsed, and the rival firm suffered a humiliating defeat. Thorne's firm, on the other hand, reaped a massive profit, vindicating his strategy and solidifying his reputation as a master trader. But the experience left its mark on Thorne. He understood that the pressure to conform, to succumb to the prevailing narrative, can be overwhelming, especially in environments where vast sums of money and reputations are at stake. He learned that true strength lies not in resisting pressure, but in harnessing it, in using it as a source of clarity and focus. He recognized that the ability to maintain a detached perspective, to remain grounded in rationality, is essential for navigating the turbulent waters of high-stakes decision-making. Thorne's success wasn't solely based on financial acumen. It was rooted in his understanding of human psychology, his ability to anticipate and exploit the emotional vulnerabilities of others. He recognized that pressure can be a powerful weapon, capable of driving individuals to irrational behavior, of forcing them to make mistakes they would otherwise avoid. The key to survival, he believed, lies in cultivating inner resilience, in developing the capacity to withstand intense pressure without compromising one's principles or losing sight of one's goals. He cultivated a personal philosophy based on stoicism and strategic thinking, a framework for navigating the complex and often ruthless world of finance. Pressure, when applied correctly, acts as a crucible, separating the strong from the weak. Those who lack inner fortitude are the first to crack, their minds overwhelmed by anxiety and doubt. They become predictable, their actions dictated by fear rather than reason. This predictability is their undoing. The truly ruthless observe this unraveling with clinical detachment, calculating their next move with precision. They recognize the signs of impending collapse, the hesitation in the voice, the frantic glances, the desperate attempts to justify their actions. These are the signals that betray weakness, the openings that can be exploited. The trap is not sprung with brute force but with subtle manipulation. A carefully worded question, a veiled threat, a calculated display of power. Each interaction is designed to amplify the pressure, to push the victim closer to the breaking point. The weak attempt to appease, to negotiate, to find a compromise, but in doing so, they surrender their advantage. They reveal their willingness to yield, to sacrifice their principles in exchange for temporary relief. This is a fatal error. The predator recognizes this vulnerability and moves in for the kill. The inability to manage pressure stems from a fundamental lack of self-awareness. Those who are unsure of their own values, who lack a clear sense of purpose, are easily swayed by external forces. They seek validation from others, constantly calibrating their behavior to meet the expectations of those around them. This dependence on external approval makes them vulnerable to manipulation. They become puppets, their strings pulled by those who understand their insecurities. The strong, on the other hand, are self-reliant. They derive their strength from within, from a deep-seated belief in their own abilities. They are not immune to pressure, but they are able to channel it, to use it as a catalyst for growth. They understand that challenges are inevitable, that setbacks are part of the process. They do not allow fear to paralyze them. Instead, they use it as a signal to sharpen their focus and intensify their efforts. They remain adaptable, constantly adjusting their strategy in response to changing circumstances. They are not afraid to take risks, but they do so with careful calculation. They understand that true success requires a willingness to step outside their comfort zone, to embrace the unknown. The weak often succumb to the illusion of control. They believe that if they can only anticipate every possible outcome, if they can only eliminate all sources of uncertainty, they can avoid failure. This obsession with control leads them to overthink, to second-guess their decisions, to become paralyzed by analysis. They waste valuable time and energy trying to predict the future, while the strong are busy creating it. The truly competent accept that uncertainty is an inherent part of life. They do not try to eliminate it, but rather to manage it. They develop contingency plans. They build resilience into their systems. They cultivate a network of trusted advisors. They understand that the only way to truly control their destiny is to be prepared for anything. The weak also tend to personalize their failures. They see every setback as a reflection of their own inadequacy, as proof that they are not good enough. This negative self-talk erodes their confidence, making them even more vulnerable to pressure. The strong, on the other hand, view failures as learning opportunities. They analyze their mistakes, they identify areas for improvement, and they move on. They understand that failure is not the opposite of success, but a necessary step on the path to it. They maintain a growth mindset, constantly seeking to expand their knowledge and skills. They are not afraid to experiment, to take risks, to challenge the status quo. They understand that innovation requires a willingness to embrace failure, to learn from one's mistakes, and to keep moving forward. Ultimately, the ability to withstand pressure is a reflection of one's mental toughness. It is the capacity to remain calm and focused in the face of adversity, to maintain a positive attitude despite setbacks, to persevere in the face of overwhelming odds. This mental toughness is not innate. It is a skill that can be cultivated through deliberate practice. It requires a commitment to self-discipline, a willingness to push oneself beyond one's comfort zone, and a dedication to continuous improvement. Weak lack this discipline. They seek instant gratification, they avoid discomfort, they give up easily when faced with challenges. They are unwilling to put in the hard work required to develop mental resilience. They prefer to take the easy path, to avoid risk, to conform to the expectations of others. But in doing so, they forfeit their potential for greatness. They remain trapped in a cycle of mediocrity, forever at the mercy of external forces. The strong, on the other hand, embrace discomfort. They seek out challenges, they push themselves to their limits, they never stop learning and growing. They understand that true strength is forged in the crucible of adversity. They cultivate a mindset of resilience, a belief in their own ability to overcome any obstacle. They are the masters of their own destiny, the architects of their own success. The Machiavellian approach to minds under pressure begins with ruthless self-assessment. Discard any comforting narratives about inherent virtue or inevitable triumph. Instead, dissect your weaknesses with surgical precision. Identify the precise points where your resolve crumbles, where fear overwhelms reason, where the opinions of others dictate your actions. This is not an exercise in self-flagellation, but a strategic audit. You are mapping the fault lines in your mental fortress, preparing to reinforce them against future siege. Once these vulnerabilities are identified, the next step is a calculated program of controlled exposure. Do not seek to eliminate pressure entirely. That is a fool's errand. Instead, gradually increase your tolerance. Deliberately place yourself in situations that provoke anxiety, fear, or discomfort. Start with small doses and progressively escalate the intensity. The goal is not to become immune to these emotions, but to learn to manage them, to harness their energy, to prevent them from paralyzing your judgment. Visualize the master swordsman, who does not flinch from the blade, but instead anticipates its path, deflects its force, and uses its momentum to his advantage. Similarly, you must learn to use pressure as a tool, a catalyst for growth, a means of refining your abilities. This requires a deep understanding of your own psychological triggers. What specific circumstances, words, or behaviors tend to provoke a negative reaction? Once you are aware of these triggers, you can begin to develop strategies for mitigating their impact. This might involve reframing your perspective, practicing mindfulness techniques, or simply learning to disengage from toxic situations. Crucially, the Machiavellian strategist understands the power of deception. Do not telegraph your vulnerabilities to your opponents. Mask your fear with confidence, your uncertainty with decisiveness, your pain with a stoic demeanor. Appear strong even when you feel weak. Project an aura of unwavering resolve, and others will be less likely to test your limits. This is not about being dishonest, but about controlling the narrative, shaping perceptions, and maintaining a strategic advantage. Furthermore, cultivate a network of allies who can provide support and perspective during times of pressure. These are not necessarily friends or confidants, but individuals who possess valuable skills, knowledge, or influence. Use them strategically, seeking their counsel when needed, leveraging their resources to achieve your goals. However, be wary of becoming overly reliant on others. Ultimately, your ability to withstand pressure depends on your own inner resources. Cultivate self-reliance, independence, and a fierce determination to succeed. Embrace solitude as a source of strength, a space for introspection, a refuge from the chaos of the external world. Remember that the greatest victories are often won in the silence of one's own mind. The Machiavellian strategist also understands the importance of adaptability, the ability to adjust to changing circumstances, to pivot quickly when faced with setbacks, to improvise when plans go awry is crucial for survival in a high-pressure environment. Do not become rigidly attached to a particular course of action. Be prepared to abandon your strategies if they are no longer effective. Be flexible, resourceful, and always on the lookout for new opportunities. Finally, the Machiavellian approach to minds under pressure involves a constant cycle of learning and refinement. After each experience, take time to analyze what went well and what could have been improved. Identify your mistakes, learn from your failures, and use this knowledge to develop new strategies for the future. This is a never-ending process of self-improvement, a continuous quest for greater resilience and control. Only through relentless self-examination and adaptation can you hope to master the art of thriving under pressure and achieving your goals in the face of adversity. Remember always to maintain a detached perspective. Emotions are tools, not masters. Use them, but do not be used by them. Observe your own reactions with clinical detachment, as if you were studying a subject under a microscope. This allows you to identify patterns, predict behaviors, and ultimately control your emotional responses. The ultimate goal is to become a master of your own mind, capable of navigating even the most treacherous waters with calm precision and unwavering resolve. This requires a lifelong commitment to self-discipline, strategic thinking, and the ruthless pursuit of self-mastery. Consider the Roman Empire, a civilization built on a foundation of relentless pressure, both internal and external. The legions, symbols of Roman power, were constantly subjected to immense pressure on the battlefield. Imagine the psychological weight borne by a centurion, responsible for the lives of 80 men, facing a barbarian horde or a well-disciplined phalanx. The fear of death, the cries of the wounded, the sheer chaos of combat, all these factors combine to create an environment of almost unbearable stress. Yet, the Roman military machine functioned with remarkable efficiency for centuries. This was not simply due to superior weaponry or tactics, but also to the rigorous training and psychological conditioning that prepared soldiers for the horrors of war. They were taught to suppress their fear, obey orders without question, and fight as a unified force, regardless of the circumstances. Discipline was paramount, and any sign of weakness was swiftly punished. This created a sense of shared responsibility and mutual dependence, forging strong bonds between soldiers and fostering a collective resilience that allowed them to withstand immense pressure. Beyond the battlefield, the Roman political arena was another crucible of intense pressure. Senators, emperors, and ambitious generals constantly vied for power, engaging in complex intrigues, betrayals, and power struggles. The stakes were incredibly high, and the consequences of failure could be devastating. Consider the example of Julius Caesar, a brilliant military strategist and shrewd politician who navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics with exceptional skill. He faced constant opposition from his enemies, who plotted against him, spread rumors, and even attempted to assassinate him. Yet, Caesar remained remarkably composed and focused, using his charisma, intelligence, and political acumen to outmaneuver his opponents and consolidate his power. He understood the importance of controlling his emotions, maintaining a calm demeanor, and projecting an image of strength and confidence, even in the face of adversity. Caesar also recognized the need to adapt his strategies to changing circumstances. He was a master of improvisation, able to react quickly and decisively to unexpected challenges. His ability to think on his feet and make sound judgments under pressure was a key factor in his success. The pressure cooker of war also offers insight. Think of the siege of Stalingrad, a brutal and protracted battle that tested the limits of human endurance. Both the German and Soviet soldiers were subjected to relentless bombardment, extreme weather conditions, and constant close-quarters combat. The psychological toll was immense, with soldiers suffering from exhaustion, fear, and despair. Yet, both sides continued to fight with astonishing tenacity, driven by a combination of ideological conviction, national pride, and the fear of defeat. The ability to cope with this extreme pressure depended on a number of factors, including leadership, training, and the strength of unit cohesion. Effective leaders were able to maintain morale, provide support, and instill a sense of purpose, even in the darkest of times. Soldiers who had received proper training were better equipped to deal with the physical and psychological demands of combat. And those who were part of a strong and supportive unit were more likely to withstand the pressure, knowing that they could rely on their comrades for help and encouragement. The Roman and Stalingrad examples highlight the critical importance of preparation, discipline, and adaptability in dealing with minds under pressure. Those who are able to anticipate challenges, control their emotions, and adjust their strategies accordingly are far more likely to succeed, whether on the battlefield, in the political arena, or in any other high-pressure environment. The human mind, when subjected to prolonged duress, operates under a distinct set of constraints. It ceases to be the rational instrument we typically associate with decision-making, and instead becomes a survival mechanism, prioritizing immediate safety and threat mitigation. Consider, for instance, the phenomenon of learned helplessness, where repeated exposure to uncontrollable stressors leads to a passive acceptance of adversity, even when opportunities for escape or improvement are present. This psychological state is not a conscious choice, but rather a neurological adaptation, a rewiring of the brain's circuits to conserve energy and minimize further suffering. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for higher-level cognitive functions like planning and problem-solving, becomes less active, while the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, takes over, triggering primal responses such as fight, flight, or freeze. This shift in neural activity explains why individuals under extreme pressure often exhibit impulsive behavior, make poor judgments, or struggle to articulate their thoughts clearly. Their mental bandwidth is simply overwhelmed by the urgency of the situation, leaving little room for nuanced analysis or strategic thinking. The effects of chronic stress on the brain are particularly insidious. Prolonged exposure to cortisol, the stress hormone, can damage the hippocampus, a region critical for memory and learning, leading to cognitive decline and an increased risk of mental health disorders. Furthermore, stress can disrupt the delicate balance of neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that regulate mood, sleep, and appetite, contributing to anxiety, depression, and other psychological disturbances. It is crucial to recognize that these are not signs of weakness or character flaws, but rather predictable consequences of the brain's physiological response to overwhelming adversity. To mitigate these effects, it is essential to cultivate mental resilience, the ability to bounce back from setbacks and adapt to changing circumstances. This involves developing a range of coping mechanisms, such as mindfulness practices, cognitive reframing, and social support, to regulate emotions, challenge negative thoughts, and maintain a sense of perspective. Mindfulness, for example, allows individuals to observe their thoughts and feelings without judgment, creating a buffer between themselves and their immediate reactions. Cognitive reframing involves challenging and replacing negative or distorted thought patterns with more balanced and realistic ones, reducing the impact of stress on mental well-being. Social support provides a sense of belonging and validation, buffering against the isolating effects of stress and fostering a sense of hope and optimism. Beyond individual coping strategies, the environment also plays a critical role in shaping mental resilience. Supportive and cohesive teams, for example, can provide a sense of safety and security, mitigating the psychological impact of high-pressure situations. Leaders who prioritize psychological safety, creating a culture where individuals feel comfortable taking risks and expressing their concerns without fear of reprisal, can foster a more resilient and adaptable workforce. Conversely, toxic or abusive environments can exacerbate the negative effects of stress, leading to burnout, disengagement, and even psychological trauma. The understanding of how minds function under pressure is not merely an academic exercise. It is a practical necessity for anyone operating in a high-stakes environment. Whether it is a military commander leading troops into battle, a surgeon performing a complex operation, or a business executive navigating a turbulent market, the ability to manage one's own emotions and understand the psychological dynamics of others is essential for effective leadership and decision-making. Furthermore, the principles of mental resilience can be applied to improve performance in a wide range of domains, from sports and the arts to education and personal relationships. By understanding the mechanisms that govern our mental responses to stress, we can develop strategies to optimize our performance, enhance our well-being, and navigate the challenges of life with greater confidence and resilience. The key is to recognize that the mind is not a fixed entity, but rather a dynamic system that can be trained and conditioned to withstand pressure and thrive in adversity. Consider the case of Enron. In the late 1990s, Enron was lauded as a revolutionary energy company, an innovative force disrupting traditional markets. Its leaders cultivated an image of unparalleled success, projecting an aura of invincibility that captivated investors and attracted top talent. Beneath this carefully constructed facade, however, lay a culture of relentless pressure, where ethical considerations were routinely sacrificed in the pursuit of ever-increasing profits. Employees were subjected to intense performance evaluations, ranked against their peers in a system known as rank and yank, where the lowest performers were summarily dismissed. This created a climate of intense competition and fear, discouraging dissent and incentivizing risky behavior. The pressure to meet unrealistic targets led to widespread accounting fraud, as executives manipulated financial statements to conceal debt and inflate earnings. This deception was not the work of a few rogue individuals. It was a systemic problem, fostered by a culture that prioritized short-term gains over long-term sustainability. The company's internal controls were weak, and its board of directors, often lacking the expertise to understand the complex financial instruments being used, failed to provide adequate oversight. Whistleblowers who attempted to raise concerns were often marginalized or silenced, reinforcing the perception that questioning the status quo was career suicide. The psychological consequences of this environment were devastating. Employees who participated in the fraud often experienced feelings of guilt and anxiety, but felt trapped by the fear of losing their jobs or facing legal repercussions. Others, who suspected wrongdoing but lacked the courage to speak out, suffered from moral distress and a sense of complicity. The intense pressure to perform also took a toll on employees' personal lives, leading to burnout, stress-related illnesses, and strained relationships. The Enron scandal serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrosive effects of a culture that prioritizes profits over people. It highlights the importance of ethical leadership, robust internal controls, and a culture that encourages open communication and dissent. The pressure to succeed is a powerful motivator, but it must be tempered by a strong sense of ethics and a commitment to integrity. Without these safeguards, organizations are vulnerable to the kind of systemic failure that brought down Enron, leaving a trail of financial ruin and human suffering in its wake. The lessons learned from this case remain relevant today, as businesses continue to grapple with the challenges of balancing profitability with ethical responsibility in an increasingly competitive and complex global marketplace. The pursuit of excellence should never come at the expense of integrity or the well-being of employees. A truly successful organization is one that fosters a culture of innovation, collaboration, and ethical decision-making, where individuals feel empowered to speak up, take risks, and contribute their best work without fear of reprisal. Pressure exposes fault lines. It doesn't create them, but it mercilessly exploits pre-existing weaknesses in character and judgment. The individual who crumbles under duress was already leaning towards collapse. The pressure merely accelerated the inevitable. Imagine a statue, outwardly imposing but riddled with internal cracks. The casual observer sees only strength, but the sculptor knows the truth. A single tremor can shatter the illusion. Similarly, individuals who haven't rigorously tested their principles and hardened their resolve are vulnerable when confronted with intense challenges. They may possess intellectual understanding of right and wrong, but lack the emotional fortitude to act accordingly when personal stakes are high. The promise of reward, the fear of punishment, or the desire for social acceptance can easily override their supposed moral compass. This is the essence of the trap, mistaking intellectual assent for genuine conviction. The weak often rationalize their failures by blaming external forces. They portray themselves as victims of circumstance, puppets of a system beyond their control. While it's true that environmental factors can exert significant influence, the ultimate responsibility always rests with the individual. To claim otherwise is to abdicate agency and embrace a state of perpetual helplessness. Consider the soldier who deserts his post under fire. He may argue that the enemy was too strong, the situation too hopeless, but his failure ultimately stems from a lack of courage and commitment. He chose self-preservation over duty, and no amount of rationalization can absolve him of that choice. The ability to withstand pressure is not an innate gift. It's a skill cultivated through deliberate practice and unwavering self-discipline. It requires constant vigilance, a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, and a relentless pursuit of personal integrity. Furthermore, the weak often succumb to the allure of conformity. They prioritize fitting in over standing up, echoing the prevailing sentiment rather than voicing their own convictions. This is particularly evident in environments where dissent is discouraged or punished. Individuals who fear ostracism or retribution are more likely to remain silent, even when witnessing unethical behavior. The insidious nature of groupthink can lead to collective blindness, where dissenting voices are silenced and flawed decisions are amplified. The pressure to conform is a powerful force, but it can be resisted through cultivating a sense of self-worth independent of external validation. The individual who knows his own value is less likely to compromise his principles for the sake of acceptance. They understand that true strength lies not in blending in, but in standing out, even when it's unpopular. The cost of conformity is ultimately higher than the price of dissent. Another common pitfall is the tendency to compartmentalize ethics. Individuals may adhere to a strict moral code in their personal lives, but suspend those principles when it comes to professional or financial matters. This cognitive dissonance allows them to justify actions that would otherwise be considered reprehensible. For example, a businessman might donate generously to charity while simultaneously engaging in unethical business practices. He rationalizes this behavior by arguing that the ends justify the means, or that he's simply playing by the rules of the game. However, such compartmentalization is ultimately unsustainable. Integrity is not a divisible commodity, it's an indivisible whole. The individual who compromises his ethics in one area of his life is likely to find those compromises seeping into other areas, eroding his moral foundation over time. The final vulnerability lies in the failure to anticipate consequences. The weak are often short-sighted, focusing on immediate gratification rather than considering the long-term ramifications of their actions. They may engage in risky or unethical behavior, assuming that they won't get caught or that the consequences will be minimal. This recklessness stems from a combination of arrogance and ignorance. They overestimate their own abilities and underestimate the potential for unforeseen events. The ability to think strategically and anticipate potential pitfalls is crucial for navigating complex situations and avoiding costly mistakes. It requires a deep understanding of cause and effect, a willingness to learn from past experiences, and a healthy dose of skepticism. The strong are not merely reactive, they are proactive, anticipating challenges and preparing for adversity. They understand that every action has a consequence, and they take responsibility for those consequences, both intended and unintended. Their minds are weapons as sharp as any sword. The disintegration begins subtly, a faint tremor in the foundation. A compromise here, a white lie there, each seemingly insignificant in isolation. But like grains of sand accumulating, they coalesce into a formidable weight, crushing the spirit from within. The mind, once a fortress of principle, becomes a labyrinth of justification, where self-deception reigns supreme. The individual, trapped within its walls, loses sight of the exit, blinded by the flickering flames of rationalization. The erosion of integrity is a process, not an event. It's a slow, insidious decay that weakens the structure of the self, making it vulnerable to external pressures. The constant need to maintain the facade of virtue becomes exhausting, consuming valuable mental resources that could be better spent on productive endeavors. The weight of the lies, both spoken and unspoken, becomes unbearable, leading to anxiety, depression, and a profound sense of emptiness. The individual, once driven by purpose and conviction, becomes a hollow shell, devoid of passion and direction. The inability to foresee the ripples of one's actions reveals a fundamental flaw in perception, a failure to grasp the interconnectedness of events. The world is not a series of isolated incidents, but a complex web of cause and effect. Every decision, every action has a consequence, however small it may seem. The weak, blinded by their own desires and insecurities, fail to recognize these connections. They act impulsively, without considering the potential ramifications of their choices. They are like children playing with fire, oblivious to the danger they pose to themselves and others. This lack of foresight is not merely a matter of intelligence, It's a reflection of a deeper moral failing. It's a lack of empathy, a failure to consider the impact of one's actions on others. It's a self-centeredness that blinds the individual to the larger context, making them incapable of making sound judgments. The ability to anticipate consequences requires a certain detachment, a willingness to step back from the immediate situation and view it from a broader perspective. It requires the ability to think critically, to analyze information objectively, and to identify potential pitfalls. It also requires a healthy dose of humility, a recognition of one's own limitations and biases. The strong are not afraid to admit when they are wrong or to seek advice from others. They understand that they do not have all the answers, and they are constantly seeking to improve their understanding of the world. They are lifelong learners, always seeking new information and perspectives. They are also adept at managing their emotions, preventing them from clouding their judgment. They are able to remain calm and rational in the face of adversity, making sound decisions even under pressure. They view every challenge as an opportunity to learn and grow, and they never allow themselves to be defeated by setbacks. They are masters of their own minds, able to control their thoughts and emotions, and to use them to their advantage. They recognize the inherent chaos of existence and the limits of prediction. Consider the chess master, not simply reacting to the opponent's last move, but visualizing the board 5, 10, 15 moves ahead. The novice sees only the immediate threat, while the master anticipates the subtle traps, the long-term strategic advantages. This foresight is not a mystical gift, but a cultivated skill, honed through years of study, practice, and self-reflection. It is the ability to identify patterns, to recognize the underlying principles that govern the game, and to anticipate the opponent's likely responses. It's a combination of intellect, intuition, and experience. The chess master understands that every move has a consequence, and they carefully consider the potential ramifications before making a decision. They are not afraid to sacrifice a pawn or even a more valuable piece if it will ultimately lead to a winning position. They are willing to take risks, but they do so in a calculated and deliberate manner. They are masters of strategy, able to plan and execute complex maneuvers with precision and skill. The board is a microcosm of the world, and the lessons learned on the chessboard can be applied to many other areas of life. The principles of strategy, planning, and foresight are essential for success in business, politics, and even personal relationships. The pressures of life, the constant demands and expectations can feel overwhelming. The temptation to compromise, to cut corners, to take the easy way out can be strong. But it is in these moments of weakness that character is truly tested. It is in these moments that the individual must choose between integrity and expediency, between principle and pragmatism. The choice is not always easy, but it is always clear. The path of integrity is the path of strength, the path of long-term success. The path of compromise is the path of weakness, the path of ultimate failure. The individual who chooses integrity will face challenges and setbacks, but they will also gain the respect of others and, more importantly, the respect of themselves. They will be able to look themselves in the mirror without shame or regret. They will be able to live with a clear conscience, knowing that they have done what is right, even when it was difficult. Those who crumble under pressure reveal a pre-existing fragility, a lack of internal fortitude. The pressure itself is merely a catalyst, exposing the cracks that were already there. The strong, by contrast, become tempered by pressure. Like steel forged in fire, they emerge stronger and more resilient. They have developed the mental discipline, the emotional intelligence, and the strategic thinking required to withstand adversity. They have cultivated a deep sense of self-awareness, understanding their own strengths and weaknesses, and they have learned to manage their emotions effectively. They are not immune to fear or doubt, but they do not allow these emotions to control them. They acknowledge their fears, but they face them head-on, refusing to be paralyzed by them. They are able to maintain a clear sense of purpose and direction, even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. They are masters of their own destiny, able to navigate the complexities of life with grace and resilience. The ability to withstand pressure is not merely a matter of survival, it's a matter of thriving. It's the ability to not only cope with adversity but to use it as an opportunity to grow and learn. The strong do not merely survive,